Hello. Howdy, folks. You got me? Excellent. Facebook seem to have updated their I seem to be delayed. That's not what I want, is it? 1, 2. 1, 2. Am I in sync? Let's have a look. 1, 2. 1, 2. That's right, I'm in sync. How strange. Okie doke. Right, got a bit of a treat for you right now. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to post the I'm going to give you a preview of the Lyra 8 video that I shot. I've also got the Lyra 8 set up, so we've got some new fancy hardware that gives me a bit, and I've also got the SH01A, which I have to say, it's pretty nice. It feels like the boutique could have been made for this particular format. Anyway, more on that. More on that later. It's just me and Gaz today. Everybody is otherwise engaged, but that's fine. As ever. Just hit record there. There was a hair delay. Yeah, okay. Well, we might have to work that out later because it's quite... I thought I'd sorted it out. Anyway, I'm going to play you the Lyra 8, which is this Russian synthesizer, organismic synthesizer. You have to say that carefully, which is based on 8 voices, which you can have a slight modification of tone and a sort of fairly non-standard interface, but it's capable of some lovely sounds. So I hope you enjoy this, and catch you in a sec. Welcome to Sonic Lab. Today we're looking at something quite unusual, and that is, you can see it on the screen behind me, it's the Soma Laboratories Lyra 8, an organismic synthesizer. I say organismic carefully because it's very close to another word that it's not. Although there are certain similarities with perhaps some of the sensations you get from this synthesizer, it is a very unusual instrument. It's the brainchild of a guy called Vlad Kramer, who is a Russian performance artist slash philosopher type thing. And what he's built here is a kind of an unusual instrument. He does a lot of research into Indian scales, also the notion of kind of connecting with an instrument in terms of non-linearity. That, you know, he seems to be quite fixated on the non-linearity of the human brain, and how many conventional electronic instruments are very linear and require, you know, you to learn an interface and to be connected to the way it wants you to work. The idea is that, you know, with this you're supposed to connect with it on a more neuron-based level, or sort of subconscious level. I'm not entirely sure how this, but he puts it to the... One thing he says is, you know, how come an instrument like a violin, which is just a piece of wood and a few wires, continues to be used by people and people can connect with it emotionally. I think what he was trying to do here is create something in electronics that had those kind of characteristics. And to some degree, I would say he has succeeded. So this is it. It is a big white metal box. It is absolutely solid. It's built like the proverbial Russian tank, I'd say, T-34 or T-32 if you're interested in military history. Probably not. Very, very nice knobs and switches, really beautifully built. In fact, I opened it up. I should have put a bit of footage in here. I opened it up because I was curious to see what was inside, because I had a suspicion that, you know, it might be a Raspberry Pi or something. That is definitely not the case. The insides are beautifully built. It's incredibly well constructed. It's got, you know, even little details where you've got wires holding caps in on the board, really thick solid wires between circuit boards and headers. You know, when you open it up, you can understand why it's so heavy, because it is cram-packed with electronics, and they've done a beautiful job of constructing it. It's kind of like a work of art inside, if you appreciate that sort of thing. So essentially what we have here are 8 voices. There's no keyboard input. What you use are these sensors here, which when you make a contact, it creates and triggers the corresponding voice or oscillator. There are 8 oscillators in 2 groups of 4. Each group of 4 can be pitch modified globally, and also there's a hold function. So if I turn this up, I'm getting all of those oscillators, which I've got FM in there, so I've got all these oscillators. Now there's also some tonal changes that you can make to the oscillators, and that's with the sharp knob. Now the sharp knob takes it from a triangle wave through to a square wave. That's basically the only tonal characteristic. It works on voice pairs, so 1 and 2 have a sharp knob, 3 and 4, etc, etc. That's how it works. Now there are a few other little modifiers that we can take for this. If I come back here and I hold, take the sharp, and I switch vibrato in, once it takes a little while to get going, we've got different vibrato rates for different voices. So turning this up, we get quite a kind of moving sort of sound depending on how you've got these all individually tuned. And if I go to the high voice, take the vibrato off, it takes a little while to get back in there. So we've got another tune in there. Now if we come back to these knobs, there's no quantization on this whatsoever, so you can get kind of anywhere in between. So it is actually possible, although not always repeatable, to tune them so closely that they cancel the phase out of each other. But I mean, I have to say, you know, it is quite fiddly. You have to do everything by ear, and that's, I guess, part of the philosophy of it. You know, they don't want to make things easy for you, which is, you know, both a blessing and a curse depending on how you feel about such things. So essentially we can build up. There we go. They start to kind of cancel each other out. So there we have all our voices tuned. Now on the top are the kind of processing aspects to this, and we've got 2 delays with a single feedback control that you can modulate either via this, which is a sort of, they call it a hyper LFO, and it's 2 LFOs. I think they're square wave, and you can add them together or so you multiply or add, and then there's also a little switch for this kind of soft FM between them. So it's not just a straightforward LFO, there's all this kind of interaction going between it. So for instance, if I wanted to take I say this note here, I can create these kind of rhythmic effects. And again, it's kind of quite hit or miss. And this is kind of the nub of it really, because it's quite hard as a reviewer to review this, because anything I find, oh yeah, that's good, I should show that, it's almost totally impossible to recreate it. And so therefore, you know, if you're going to use something like this, it's really important, I think, that you just hit record whenever you play with it, unless, you know, you're just messing about with it, because the stuff that comes out can be wild, beautiful, weird, any mixture of in between, and it's very difficult to get back to any of those places, so it's quite hard to demonstrate for the same reason. So if I switch the output from LFO off, and then we start looking at the delay. So we've got this sound, I'll bring we can create these quite dreamy. Again, if we switch the vibrato in, we're getting these sort of interesting drones. And if we start, maybe take the drone up, or we use the drone on the left hand side. Take the vibrato off. We're starting to get these, you know, build up these textures. Envelopes are fixed, so that's a slow envelope, or fast, that's called fast. If I switch it to slow, we get a much longer release time to it. And also we've got this hold knob, which just basically puts it into drone mode effectively. And you can modify the pitch of each voice group separately with this knob. So that gives you a little bit of extra control. So if we now come again to one of these knobs, the other thing that we can do as well as this delay is distortion. I'll take that out, and you can. You get quite a lot of, I mean, it's extreme, but you can get these interesting tonal sounds out of it. So if I, and you've got a mix control and a drive control, so you could have a little bit of drive and a lot of mix, or a lot of drive so you kind of think in terms of sounds that it's capable of on a basic level. It's like old school electronics, but with additional modulation and other weird stuff going on. So if we come back to the delay, I think it's worth exploring this a bit, because this has an awful lot of creative possibilities. I think if we just kind of listen to it in its basic form. So obviously, like, I think it's one of those sort of digital bucket brigade type of things where the delay time decreases the bit depth, but you can create these really sort of almost self-generating feedback loops, which are really quite interesting. Now if I take the feedback down a bit, maybe play this sound through it, and I'm going to add modulation to both of the delay times. And affect it with the we can get these kind of chorus type effects. Now the LFO could be switched in, or we can get it into self-modulation mode, which means that the audio output is kind of coming back into itself, and it's really unusual. Again, you know, you're getting into really bizarre territory. Anyway, as I said, we've got the distortion as well. So the next thing to really check out is the way that we can control it, such as there is. So I've got an Arturia key step here, which I'll just bring in. So I'm just going to plug the CV out of the key step into the CV in, voice control in of the Lyra. And now if I come back to the unit, let's take all the other effects down. So now when I switch, these switches here will control, obviously I can control, if I take it out, I'm using the LFO to modulate the pitch, which again is kind of pretty random. If I plug the CV control back in, now in this position, this will be controlled by the incoming control voltage. So looking at what I'm playing on the keyboard, it's pretty random. I mean, there's no scaling or anything on the CV input, which I think they missed a trick there. I think that would have been really good to be able to actually tune up, say, a chord or however, a couple of oscillators, and just be able to transpose it in a kind of standardized fashion. That would have made it much more useful. So it's the same with the gate output as well, because we can take the gate output of anything we want, and we can plug that into the gate of the hold. So now if I come back here and I turn it into hold mode, nothing's happening, but as soon as I start pressing the keyboard, effectively I'm triggering the envelope setting here. So it's only, you know, slow and really slow. Would have been great to be able to have a hard gate on this so that we could actually kind of do more that kind of thing, but obviously with a hard gate signal so that we could create these sort of chopped up stuff. We've given a bit more additional flexibility, I think. So you might think that I'm actually, you know, saying bad things about this and it's really unusable and unflexible, but actually in use, what you do find is you start playing with it and these sounds just come out of it that are really astonishing and sound incredible. While I was demoing it and, you know, getting to know it over on my other workstation, my co-workers in the office were just kind of coming in and going, wow, what's that? Sounds amazing. And it does. It can sound absolutely incredible. It's just really hard to make it sound incredible with a short, detailed example, because it takes you a while to find those sweet spots. And as I say, it's very unrepeatable. There are some additional features. It's possible to set these into FM modes, and that's done by the switch here. You switch these switches up. If I just play, maybe, let's take this up and see what... These now work in FM, modulating each other. Yeah, Again, really hard to kind of go, oh yes, if I apply some FM theory to this and I can create yeah, no, forget about that. It is what it is effectively. And FM does apply an additional set of palette of sounds and parameters, but it's quite hard to know what it is you're getting when you do that. It's just whatever you get is what it is. So there's one other feature which is worth looking at, and I've got a little Roland TR-08 here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug that into the external input, because you can also use this as quite a powerful effects processor as well. So if I just take all of these out, maybe let's start with a pattern. Just hit play. So I've just got sound going into the external input, which is on a 1/4 inch jack, nothing going on. Now if I maybe start messing with the delay, maybe get some really tight get these incredibly sort of nice tight and some really unusual sounds in there. Maybe go into self oscillation mode, bring it into the high. But we can also apply the distortion. From a little bit to a lot. So, you know, you've got that additional processing, which, okay, while it can be very extreme, those delays are actually really nice, and you could apply that to melodic stuff. So you get the additional bonus of an effects processor built in as well. Okay, so is it worth your time, your money? One thing I will say, it's about 540 euros plus tax and shipping, so I think it gets to around about £750, depending on where you are in the world. Looking at the build quality and just the kind of, you know, the components that are involved, I don't think that's actually a bad deal. Whether or not you need it in your life is completely another matter. And I can honestly say I don't think there's anything else like this out there. It's a really unique and unusual instrument. True, it doesn't have those traditional methods of triggering and CV, which I think is a shame they didn't make some more concessions to that, because it's capable of some really quite wonderful sounds. There is a waiting list for it still. It's down to a few months. It was a lot longer, but they have actually also introduced a new manufacturer base in Europe, which means capacity is really ramping up. So you should be able to pick this up in a matter of weeks or months over a much shorter production cycle. I can heartily recommend it. I mean, if you're into kind of weird industrial or experimental things, then this is right up your street, and it can sound absolutely beautiful, horrible, extreme, aggressive, scientific, all of those things. Really is quite an interesting instrument. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. That was the Sonic Lab review of the Lyra 8 Organismic Synthesizer. See you next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Hello there. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, you can.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Right. Yes, I can hear you. I made a special little shot for us, Gaz, because there's only two of us.
I've just made a mistake of having a big mouthful of mixed nuts. So that was,
you're a bit low in your shot, if that's possible to fix. Excellent. Thank you very much. So yeah, I got the. I've also got the SH01A, which I have to say sounds pretty good. It's really. It feels like they've really nailed it with the kind of boutique format for this particular synth. Let's see. I think there's a couple of. And it does 4 voices.
Is it the same price as that was 350 quid?
Yeah, it is. It sure is. Right, so I think we got everybody, because it's just me and you today, Gaz.
Yeah.
Everybody just, that's how it goes sometimes. Even though you got a large pool of individuals, sometimes they're just, the planets don't align. But never mind, I'm sure we got plenty to talk about. I guess we could do a show fairly shortly. I'm just waiting because there's a new Facebook Live interface, and I'm hoping that it doesn't make anything more complicated. But we'll have to see, won't we? You never can tell with this kind of stuff. Right. You ready? Should we just do it?
Yeah, I'm all good. All set.
All right. Stand by. Here we go. Hello and welcome to episode... Oh, that's you, Gaz. Hello, welcome to episode 413 of Sonic Talk, the music technology podcast. We talk about all things to do with software, electronic music instruments, all kinds of stuff. All the things that you would hope to have to do with music technology, the surrounding technologies, playing live, any kind of thing that you like. And you can subscribe to us via YouTube. Sonicstate is our YouTube channel. We thoroughly appreciate it. We did get over 100,000 recently. We got the play button to prove it, but so we've still got a little way to go to the next milestone, which I think is 1 million. So yeah, if there are 1 million people, potential Sonicstate fans out there, then subscribe like crazy. Anyway, want to say thank you to Isotope for providing the show prize this week. You'll be able to win a copy of Ozone 8. We'll get into that a little bit later. And I just want to say hello to our first and only guest. Oops, wrong button. Gaz Williams. Gaz Williams, bass player, producer, music technologist, nut eater.
No, it's terrible. I'm still picking out the bits, so I apologise for that.
How are you, Gaz?
Yeah, good, thanks. I'm really self-conscious now. I've got all bits.
No, you can't see a thing. Your video's looking good, though.
Well, I stroked my moustache a little bit longer. Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, thanks to everybody who checked out the Asteroid Deluxe album, The Lawn. I saw a big spike last week after talking about it, so I was ever so grateful. So thank you, and quite a bunch of you have already bought it, the vinyl copy, which is super nice. So we're very pleased about that. Thank you.
Always good when you do something and people actually want it, because
yeah.
One gets this is both the blessing and the curse of the new digital age as well. I guess you've done a physical thing, but it's so easy to do self-release, and you don't have to wait for the record company to line up and everything. You just do it,
yeah,
and then you have to wait and see what happens, don't you? Which can be,
yeah, and and we, like in our case, we've made the release on Bandcamp and only Bandcamp, and made the conscious decision not to put it on all the streaming services, just not to make it available anywhere else. Bandcamp offers the best royalty rate, doesn't it? Bandcamp takes 15%, as opposed to iTunes will take 30%. And just make the people come to you and use the platform that you want to use, and and don't play the game. Don't,
yeah.
And I am making a bit of a statement against the streaming sites as well, a little bit, just sort of this sense of entitlement people have, and just sort of think, well, no, you can go to Bandcamp, check it out. You know, probably most of you won't like it, some of you will like it, and then it's just.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the as we've seen past, the royalty rates for artists is just, you know, they're just non-existent, are they? They're really low, so it's very hard to achieve any.
Why doesn't? I just don't understand why just everyone just doesn't use Bandcamp though. I mean, you can do your, you know, you can sell your merchandise through Bandcamp. We're selling our LPs through Bandcamp, and there's a new app that's just come out like a couple of weeks ago, the Bandcamp app for artists, so you can. You can look at all the different metrics and various bits and bobs, and from your phones and stuff, and it just occurred to me the other day. I was just thinking, what more does any musician need for getting the music out there? And yeah, and it just seems to be the perfect solution. I don't understand why anyone would choose any other system, really.
Yeah, no, I put my stuff up on there as well, and it's, you know, occasionally nice to you get notification someone spent another 75 pence, you know.
But the way the merch side of things works is quite interesting though as well, and I've only just discovered this from doing this particular release, and that's that any of the royalties paid are not the, you know, the rates that you pay to Bandcamp through your sales of merch are just subtracted from future digital sales. That's how if that makes sense. That's how they do it. Yeah, so it means, you know, if you sell some vinyl and then they don't take the royalty of that until someone has bought a download, and then they'll take what's owed from your next digital sale.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was just going through
we should get them as a sponsor, shouldn't we? They should be sponsoring this show. I reckon. Worth a try.
But I mean, you know, I know I'm going on a little bit about it because I've been immersing myself with it in the last few weeks, but it was just striking me as just that there is no better solution for musicians ever in the entirety of the music industry than Bandcamp. So
yeah, I know. I would
be wrong.
I think it's a good system. I should also point out, not only have I got the Lyra 8, which is over there, that's the actual shot of it live. Hold on, I'll prove it to you.
What's he doing?
I just realised I hadn't switched the mixer channel on. So that backfired rather spectacularly, didn't it?
Yeah.
I've also got the SH01A boutique. I know you're looking at some of the other boutiques, but I have to say,
yeah,
this thing really does sound pretty good. It seems like it feels like if I just. It's got all of the characteristics of the SH01, really nice sort of low, thick basses and snappy kind of envelopes and filters, and I'll be looking at that soon. But as a form factor, it seems to really makes the most, oops, that's the shot I want, makes the most sense as a boutique. I don't feel that the short faders are a hindrance in this one, which is weird because they are short and there's no denying, but somehow it feels about right. It's interesting. So I can recommend, I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Yeah, so I've been playing with the. Am I allowed to say?
What, the others?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you can.
So I've been having a bit of an odyssey with the DO5, and I mean, one of the things that's super impressive, I think, with all of the boutique range is the way that they've slavishly copied the operating system, and you know the way that you interact with it is identical to the original devices, you know, flaws and all, and I think that's what's quite interesting with the DO5. It's got exactly the same menu diving this sort of method of doing stuff, which is quite laborious, although there are some shortcuts. I'd be keen to find out what the other shortcuts are, if there are any hidden ones. And I have got a question. This is something I was wondering about. So on the D50, the rather than there being an ADSR envelope, it's more like an ADSR
Yeah, so
envelope.
it was one of the first
So
multi-stage envelopes, I think, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
so they called it the time variable envelope, and so you've got T1s to 5 for the different times of the different areas, and then you've got the levels for the different ones too. And I was wondering what was the reason that this happened? Why did Roland adopt this type of envelope? Because I mean, it does mean that quick edits, you just have to kind of remember what's what. I mean, helpfully, there's a little graphic on the front which has got the picture of the envelope with the different numbers on to show you where you are within it. But I was just wondering what the logic behind that sort of, attack, decay, sustain, release.
I think it
it
was purely to give you kind of more control, so you could have envelopes, because usually, up until then, or most envelopes would just be a two-phase while key on, whereas that way you could do a kind of have a second rise or a second level of phase, so you get more dynamic articulation, I suppose, is the kind of concept behind it. But
I was wondering if it was something to do with the way that, because the D50 has got these like very small samples in there, hasn't it? The PCM samples, and when you're playing with some of the string, I'm playing with some of the string parts. It just uses just the fronts, and I was wondering if that envelope was, able
I don't know.
I'm
not sure is the answer of that, but I think it gives you, as I say, finer control of the partials, as it's been said in the chat room, which I think was Create
cool.
Music here said that. Hello to the chat room. That's the YouTube chat.
Better get into the chat room.
Sonicstate Live, and also we got our own IRC chat, which is sonicstate.com live. All the coordinates are there, so you should be able to find it if you just go to sonicstate.com live, and that gets you to where you need to go. So there's a few things, I suppose. I mean, did you get a chance? There was a certain release today which I know you were going to have a look at. I don't know. We could perhaps comment about it. Maybe we should start with that, because it's actually pretty big news, isn't it? What do you think?
Yeah, good. I mean, we're talking about Cubase
9.5 dropped today.
Yeah. I
let me
always
hit a video first. I think I've got one here lined up. What number is it? I probably haven't actually.
Welcome to Cubase Pro 9.5. This release sees Steinberg carry on with the tradition of adding features that are heavily requested by our many users. And as usual, we've thrown in a few Steinberg surprises, and we continue with the ongoing work to bring you streamlined workflow and greater performance. Let's go take a look. In Cubase Pro 9, we reconfigured the zones in the project window, making it easier for you to get access to important functionality. In 9.5, the control room has been implemented into the right zone. Now we can quickly give performers whatever they need during the recording process. You also have instant access to talkback and monitoring cues. Cubase 9 saw the introduction of the mix console in the lower zone. Now we've also got a meter tab in the right zone. You can produce with confidence in the project window with access to track metering in the lower zone and master and loudness metering in the right zone. Feedback from producers on the implementation of the sampler track in Cubase 9 has been phenomenal. But the word is, you want instant access to your external sounds. So we've given you a file browser button in the Media Bay tab. Now you can take your time searching for sounds and previewing them inside of the Media Bay.
I won't play the whole thing, as I want to say. I expect someone will take a drink at me saying that, because it's quite long. But there are a lot of features. I mean, some of the highlights, I think the one of the big things is the 64-bit mix engine, so now their internal plugins are 64-bit ready. So I guess that could make quite a big overall difference. I mean, it's pretty much under the hood. You might not notice it so much unless you're producing stuff that is extremely dynamic and extremely detailed. But you've got that. You've also got this new automation and stuff. You've had a brief look about the place. What are you most excited about? Because you're a regular user, right?
Yeah, I am, and I've been around, tried everything, and keep coming back to Cubase. And I've always really enjoyed these updates because they tend to always have workflow enhancements as well as, rather than just it being new content as such. There's always like kind of workflow developments. So one of the things that I was quite keen to look at, I noticed it was also included in the new Nuendo update is this offline processing aspect.
Oh yeah.
Now.
So you just kind of right click on a fragment of audio and process it in place, right?
Yeah, and I mean that feature was kind of always there anyway with the offline processing history, as it was called. So it's had a bit of a makeover really, and a slightly different name change, but essentially the features were there before. So I was very keen to look at that, but it still has the same problem that other one has, which is when you want to preview them. Yeah, when you want to preview the material, you've got a play button. Unless I'm missing something, you have to start the audio file from the start, and you can't skip to a little bit. So, which I was thinking, you see, that this was going to really increase the mastering capabilities of Cubase, because what we've seen in version 9 was a few things like being able to sort of bounce out individual regions, things that are useful in the mastering process. And I know that one of the things that's come in 9.5 are loads of sort of channel strip presets specifically aimed for mastering. So Cubase, Steinberg are definitely trying to sort of make Cubase maybe a little bit more mastering friendly. But like, you know, as anyone knows, when you're mastering, you want to sort of jump around the file, you know, the area, and try see how the settings work in the different areas. But it seems like it's only restricted to just playing from the start again. And now I might be wrong about that, it's early days, but that was always the workflow hindrance of the previous application of that. So we'll have to see about that. But otherwise, it's funny, there are a bunch of things, and we were talking about this with Ableton Live 10 last week, in that some of the new features are essentially features which are just bringing it in line with existing DAWs. So Cubase, for instance, gets the thing that Ableton Live had, I think, almost from the beginning, which is a variable quantize depending on the zoom. So, you know, the more you zoom in, the more kind of grid lines appear, and therefore, you know, without having to change the quantize settings, you just change the zoom settings. So it's a, you know, now, when you use Ableton Live, that just seems just like a perfect implementation. So it's now finally made it to Cubase. But you know, these sort of developments, they don't seem particularly exciting. But from anything that makes the workflow that much smoother is, you know, especially when, I mean, I sort of spend like weeks on end in Cubase. So any workflow things, it might mean I might get a couple more days at my end of life, you know, just from that zoom feature. Just if it all adds up, doesn't it? You know, all these little time savers.
Oh, I see. Do you think the amount of hours you could have saved by if that had been implemented earlier?
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Steinberg, for the few extra days. I'm gonna live longer.
The other thing that's in, I mean, I was thinking back to this. You know, I mean, I used Cubase on Atari when it was just a MIDI sequencer, and that was released in 1989. So we're talking, you know, what's that? That's 11. That's 28 years that this DAWs. I mean, I can't think of many other DAWs that have been in existence this long. I don't even think Pro Tools has been that long, and that is an astonishing legacy, isn't it? And you know, they dip, they ebb and flow, don't they? Because they were the innovators, then they tail back a bit, and then recently again they've started to kind of really innovate, particularly as you say into the area of workflow, right?
Yes, and this also brings me on to another point, which is what we've been seeing now. I think we're in maybe the third iteration of this happening, that the 0.5 release is a paid for upgrade, and this is like a yearly upgrade now. So next year, around this time next year, I would expect Cubase 10 will come out, and then the following year 10.5. That seems to now be the pattern for the past few years, and this contrasts quite sort of significantly with Ableton Live, as we were mentioning. It was like 4.5 years before paid upgrades. So it's so people can be a little bit you know, grumbly about paying for the 0.5 upgrade. If you choose not to do that and decide to go from, say, version 8 to version 9, or version 9 to version 10, and skip the 0.5 upgrade, you obviously get all of the 0.5 enhancements, but there's a slight difference in price, so it does work out cheaper to always maintain the upgrades on a yearly basis. So it sort of makes it a little bit like the subscription model, but unlike
it's just a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they need to get a certain amount of revenue every year just to keep them sort of turning over. But unlike the subscription model, though, if you choose not to keep paying for it, you still own the software. So I feel very uncomfortable about the subscription model getting everywhere. I would much rather this model that Steinberg are doing than a subscription model personally.
Yeah, and the same for Ableton as well. But anyway, it's available now. I'm not entirely sure what the upgrade pricing is. I was looking for it by Cubase. Let's see what it says here. Oh, it took a while to load. So let's just see what the Cubase Pro. So update from 9. What would that cost? 50 quid. I mean, that's not an excessive amount, is it, really? For
No.
Although 9 was a year ago. So I suppose 50 quid a year is, you know, is still going to be cheaper than a subscription model. But yeah, available now. And, you know, we'll probably have a closer look at it at some point once, because we only just got it today, right?
I mean, I literally got it like about 40 minutes ago. So, but yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff there that definitely warrants a deeper look at it. Yeah, for sure.
I always, I mean, on a side note, it always amazes me how companies that you know that are releasing something like this. I mean, presumably it's a fairly decent download. How they actually manage to sort of provide all of that? I guess it must be just cloud storage and the infinite bandwidth of sort of stuff like storing things on Amazon, whatever. But I mean, back in the old days, you know, it would have been, you know, we don't remember when Spectrasonics announced version 2 of gosh, what was the software? God. Omnisphere. You know, it just, the whole site just went down. It was just like offline. And, you know, scaling for that sort of thing must be quite challenging, I'd imagine. But something for the IT consultants and perhaps IT talk rather than Sonic talk.
Slight improvement, though, this year with Steinberg is that you download a little, like, loader. So you install that little loader and then it's like a sort of installation manager that I think that might be new. And you can pause the download and things like that. So, you know, that might negate some of the frustration of getting, you know, I've had that before with some of these upgrades, you know, you get and then it fails for whatever reason.
So it can resume and just do it when yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. That's a good idea. Right, yeah, available at steinberg.net. Go and check it out. I mean, if you're a Cubase user, I mean, it seems to me that some people, you know, eventually, I wonder at what point, you know, you have to get the feature, you know, what that killer feature is that would make you go, I'm going to jump doors. Because as we've talked a lot of times, you know, either you're a professional user and you're unlikely to have the time to invest in learning a new DAW, or you're maybe a more casual user and you're still trying to find what it is that you want to spend all your working time in it, or you use multiple things. So it's quite, I guess it serves lots of different people different ways. And
Cubase is a particularly complicated DAW as it goes, you know, certainly in comparison to something like Ableton Live. However, when you're working on really big projects, you know, 100 tracks and lots of automations and lots of stuff going on, that's where it really is something special. Oh yeah, Bezier curves. We were talking about them, weren't we?
Oh yeah, lots of extra automation stuff as well, right?
Yeah, so the automation stuff looks really super now in 9.5, you know. It was always a bit fiddly. Having to click on the line sometimes would mean that you would make a little fader move that you didn't want, and now you just hover the mouse above it and then you can put all of those nice Bezier curves in as well. So again, something that maybe other DAWs have had, but actually I gotta say, in conjunction with some of the other more automation stuff that's already in Cubase, like being able to do automation trim, you can just sort of define a little region using the range control, and then you can just trim,
just amplify the whole thing. That is so useful.
Yeah, it's super. Yes,
so useful, that kind of stuff. Right, let's get on to this. This is interesting. I don't know if you. Oh, was it this one? I'm not sure if it was this one. No, it's not this one. It's this one.
No.
I beg your pardon. This is Eternal. It's a new flanger by Cinevibes, which is called a barber pole flanger, which is like an optical illusion. It all goes in one direction continuously by the use of, I think it's 3 stereo flangers. hearing some rotation on that, but some nice things in here, actually, I must say. If you're after that particularly psychedelic or bubbly or, you know, airy vibe, this can do a number of the different ones. It's only, what is it? It's 20 euros, I think, or 20 bucks. It's pretty cheap. AU only, unfortunately. But it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see such a single kind of effect type plugin, because as we've seen, this got me thinking about another topic, which maybe we'll go. So, first of all, Gaz, got much need for flanges in your life?
Yes. But actually, I mean, last week at the top of the show, I was talking to Rich Hilton about this Gentle Giant new version of the original material from 1970, and there's a tune that's got this. I think it's called Nothing at All from 1970, and it's got this ridiculous big drum solo in it that's just got this really bizarre avant-garde piano over it, and in surround sound it's kind of swooshing around your head. But the reason why I mention it is I think it was a Tony Visconti production, actually, and
he's great.
He does that flange, and it's like tape flanging, obviously where the effect is from, and putting this big drum solo through this, you know, really kind of intense flange effect. And I was listening to it thinking about how you could achieve a similar thing like today. And funny enough, when you posted this, I thought, you could probably do that with this. You know,
I don't know if it does surround or anything. I'm not sure if it does.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, you could do that with your door, though, couldn't you? You could just pan. You could pan the affected sound around for those really important moments when you need to do surround sound panning of a drum solo.
Which is
flange.
Occasionally. Lady Aptitude in the chat room says a shepherd tone flanger. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same principle. The kind of constantly ascending. It's the same principle. But what got me going about this, it wasn't necessarily this particular plugin, but it made me start thinking a little bit about, you know, effects processing used to be a relatively simple affair, didn't it? You know, if you had a mixer, you might have big reverb, short reverb, a couple of delays. And now, obviously, with multi-effects and with plugins and what have you, it seems sort of looking almost for these effects to provide these sounds that are just harder to achieve, much in the same way that we do with synthesizer instruments, something that is a sound that is unique. And, you know, this level of complexity that we kind of looking for it is very different in effects, and that seemed to be sort of quite gradual. I guess it's down to DSP, and people can do all sorts of crazy stuff with it. I mean, are you and quite often when we mention a plugin, you know, it's usually do something really kind of fancy and really unusual. I mean, do you find that do you use, you know, these complex kind of algorithmic plugins for effects processing, or do you still stick to the sort of basics and just make sure they sound really good, or both, presumably?
Probably a bit of both, but I mean, maybe more these days, simpler and simpler. I mean, huge fan of the effects rack in Sound Toys 5. Speaking of Sound Toys, actually, that they're offering a free plate reverb at the moment until the 22nd of November. The downside is you need to have an iLock account, but you can have you can tie that iLock account. No, it can be a virtual one tied to your motherboard.
That's it, little place. Sounds really good, apparently, this, yeah.
Oh, God, I love it. I mean, I've used it on some stuff already, and I think it is amazing. It's free, but it's time limited. And as we've mentioned as well in the past, when you get take advantage of these free offers from Sound Toys, it qualifies as a proper product in your account. So when they offer like discounts through to the big bundle, you know, it counts as though as if you've already bought one. So it's an extra bonus.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's worth mentioning. But I mean, in terms of, I mean, I'm trying to think. The last plugin I probably bought was the apart from this, actually, which was a free download. I bought the Valhalla Shimmer just because that's, you know, a thing that I like to do, and that does something unique and is kind of special. It's a combination of effects that you would have had to make, you know, with multiple processes and feedback loops and all sorts of stuff, right?
Well, again, the Sound Toys 5 one is great for that, because you can feed the output of the rack back into the top, a little bit of it, to create your own sort of feedback loops within the software, and just like the kind of the phasey, is it called the phase mistress or something, that's in the Sound Toys bundle, really has that evocative sound. So I'd really recommend that, actually, for that, this type of, well, it's quite complex but simple. The Sound Toys stuff,
well, it's totally recallable, isn't it? That's the thing.
It's totally recallable. They make a relatively simple front end, and then there's usually little buttons that you can open up more functionality should you wish to go deeper with them, which is cool. But I mean, really, here at in my home studio, I've got this Retroverb reverb, Vermona spring reverb, and I just love to feed stuff out through that. It's dirty and it's quite nasty, but it just puts so much vibe.
It's funny you should say that, actually, because I was recalling, back in the day when I was involved in recording studios, people get very excited because they would get like an EMT plate, an original EMT plate, which is the size of kind of the side of the wall of a small room. And I remember also when I was working at Golfrap, they've got an EMT plate as well, which you have to have all these sort of, it's a 4-person lift, this massive piece of hardware. And those things still, people still go for that because it just gives you, it's the imperfection, I suppose, because the perfection is repeatable. When you've got an EMT plate, it probably sounds just only like the one you've got and not like anybody else's.
Yeah, definitely. And I think springs are like that as well. Springs are just have got this amazing characteristic. I love springs, spring reverbs, because everything is just constantly in flux. It's always different, the sound. I mean, yeah,
and you
great,
can experiment
really.
with different springs as well, so you can put different tension springs, different length springs, all that. That's kind of fun, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I wonder whether I should hack mine to make different spring options available, because it is quite, I mean, they are quite noisy, springs are, but that's the thing about noise. I was thinking about this the other day, like when we were fighting noise, when we were working with tape, and there was just everything was noisy and you're constantly battling noise. These days it's almost the opposite. VST instruments are kind of noise free, and lots of modern equipment has got relatively low noise. And of course, when we're recording 24-bit with huge dynamic range as well, noise is no.
That's what crappy sound cards are for, isn't it?
But I mean, noise is nowhere near what it used to be like, in terms of how much you have. So when you actually have a piece of equipment that is noisy, you've got quite a lot of
it's unique in its own way, I suppose.
Yeah, so the noise can be okay, and I'm sure everybody's discovered this as well, that sometimes when you get rid of the noise, it feels like a level of energy has been zapped out of the mix. It's sometimes
it's interesting though, isn't it? Because I mean, noise is actually used in some constant. I mean, is it in dither that it's used? There's a dither noise. There's different frequencies are used to mask, and it can provide a level of glue across multiple frequencies that is something that you can't get any other way, I think. Anyway,
but
but there you go. So yeah, that's the. Let me just bring that back up again. That's the that's the Cinevibe Eternal. Started that conversation. I think it is. What does it say? Oh, it doesn't say how much it is there. Let's see. Buy now. Let's see. You get a demo version. Oh, that's Cleep Collection. Eternal is $29. So yeah, you need 10.6 or later. It's 32 or 64-bit audio units only at present. Okay, let's have a little word from our sponsors. We'll be getting onto the competition very shortly. So yeah, this is Isotope Ozone 8. If you haven't been exposed to this, brand new iteration of their classic. Well, I guess it's classic now. Mastering technology, all sorts of new features, really impressive. Master Assistant, which enables you to kind of give you a really advanced starting point, depending on what kind of program material you're working on. Lots of different ways of choosing, and it uses machine learning to kind of constantly build and adapt that particular pool of effects. Very, very interesting technology. Tonal balance control, that's something also very interesting, which gives you these kind of displays where the individual band shows you roughly the kind of frequency content range that they work within, and you can then tweak the mix and adjust things to kind of match it so that it will sound within that range. It's not a completely tight range, so you've got plenty of ways of manipulating that, and obviously that's to taste. You're also able to control external instances of Ozone 8 within the same DAW session, as well as Neutron 2 as well, so you can actually dynamically change and fix the mix between different tracks at the mastering point as well, which is also very useful to a lot of people. I think the other thing is you can compare, I think it's up to 11 tracks or a folder full of tracks, so you can use in-app references, so you can switch and fade between different tracks that you might be trying to aim for that kind of sound. 10 references, there we go. Really powerful, lots of kind of real-world usable features that make the mastering and the tweaking process very, very intuitive. So if you want to check out Ozone 8, do check out isotope.com/ozone, and you'll be able to check out the whole thing there. And we have, in fact, a competition. We asked you last week to tweet the hashtag final master in homage to some of our terrible naming conventions, and we have a winner. The winner is John P. Patton, and his Twitter handle is @jpattonphoto, all one word. So John, if you want to get in touch, Isotope will be able to bestow a full version of Ozone 8 onto your account. Just let us know and we'll put you in touch with them, and we'll say thank you to them for providing the prize. And we've got another one to give away this week. You can win again Ozone 8, and this time we're looking for Mastering Master, which is the first word. I'm going for the obviously the doubles here quite a lot, so the hashtag Mastering Master, one word, and the hashtag Ozone 8 with the number 8 @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc. If you put that in your tweet, as well as any other stuff, you've got 140 characters, and I know Isotope do monitor this stuff. They've got a big screen in their recreational area where all this stuff comes past, and they constantly, whenever we see them in person, they say, oh yeah, we do watch that, and it kind of helps pump up the development team. So you might actually, by entering the competition, be helping speed up the motivation and development cycle of your favourite software. Who knows? So anyway, we thank Isotope for their continued sponsorship of the show, and don't forget, win Ozone 8 at your leisure. Right, here's another one. So this was the accidental video. This is the Ultimate Percussion K2X, which is something I'd never heard of. It's like a kind of Simmons type analog drum synthesizer. And this chap is called...
Hi, my name's Keith.
Synthesizer Keith.
I'll be doing some work on an Ultimate Percussion K2X drum module. The client that brought me this drum module also brought me the Simmons unit from a previous video. And just like the Simmons unit, this was manufactured in the UK, so I have to do a power supply conversion from 240 volts to 120 volts. But first, let's look at the front panel.
Or not. But it's really interesting, this. One, I'd never heard of that particular item. It's completely passed me by. There's something about analog drums that is just really particularly good. But the other thing is Synthesizer Keith then goes on and he's opening up and he's sort of saying, here's what I'm doing. And it's really fascinating. I don't know what it is. It's quite captivating. Maybe it's just me, but it's actually really interesting watching people fix things and explain how they're doing it. Even though, you know, I'm never going to need to do that in that particular instance because I've never seen one of those units or whatever. But there's a few things that this might spin off. First of all, analog drums, great news, right? I know you've got the
the Vimona DRM.
The Vimona DRM.
Yeah. Are these really rare then, these things?
Well, I haven't seen them. I mean, I don't know. I did find one on sale on eBay, which went, this was only the 5th of November, and it went for 400 quid. So, yeah, I mean, that seems quite expensive, because, I mean, my Simmons SDS 6 brain, which is analog, I think it's 6 or maybe 5. I think it's 6. I think I picked that whole kit up with a kit and everything for about 400 quid. So, yeah, I suppose you could say that was expensive.
Hang on, if I just... oh, look what I've just found.
You're joking. Who? Where the hell did that come from? Have you had that all this time?
No. It's funny, actually. A friend of mine...
I don't believe that.
Greg White, drummer who I often do a lot of stuff with. It's his. And he's told me about it for a while. It's this big green machine that he's got. But he showed it me for the first time last week. So when this came up as a topic, I just couldn't help it. I just nipped out to Greg's I just went and grabbed it off him. But trigger ins. I'm going to try it with the Beat Step. The Beat Step Pro should be perfect for this with the 8 trigger outs and the 8 trigger ins on this. The only problem I've got is I haven't got a huge amount of 1/4-inch jack to mini jack monos that you need. Yeah. So I've got 2. But so I think that, you know, something like this would almost be. I mean, because you can't do. There's like no velocity on them, is there?
No, I don't believe. I'm not sure if they, because some Simmons had sort of it's a kind of a piezo trigger, so you know the trigger
is. Oh, these are piezo triggers. Yeah,
so therefore, you know, you would get velocity, but you won't get velocity. You don't get velocity via the Beat Step.
No, that's what I was getting confused. No, so it probably would do velocity.
I'd check the sensitivity of those before you stick a 5-volt trigger in them.
Oh, really?
Well, actually, no, I was just thinking about it because I demoed, I think I demoed the Beat Step Pro, possibly with my Simmons brain, just to sort of show that it worked. And I think that worked okay, and it didn't break the Simmons, so maybe it will be fine. But I'm just thinking, so yeah, I think you'll be fine, but I certainly would not commit to that in writing in case I get sued by your drummer.
But one of the big differences between this and, say, the Vermona is that each of the channels they're all identical, absolutely identical channels. So you've got 8, which is kind of cool in a way because you could have
8 bass drums.
8. Well, you could tune them, couldn't you? Well, I'm assuming this. I haven't plugged it in yet. But you could do quite decent melodic stuff with it, I think. I'm presuming if you get enough ring out of the tone out of them, I suppose.
Yeah. Hold up. Can you hold up to the camera again? Because I'm just curious to see them.
What do you want to...
It looks like... No, I can't really see that, actually, to be honest. I tell you what it reminds me of. It's all right. I'm sure it's heavy. Don't overdo it. Don't hate to be dropped. It reminds me of one of those old cheap mixers that you used to be able to get in a SEC mixer. That's what I was...
That's what it reminds me of too, and it's kind of thin. It's thin,
it's
like
the thinness.
A SEC. Yeah.
Gosh, God, I remember chasing a SEC because they came in all different sizes, and I remember SEC made some quite big ones, so you could get a 24 input SEC or even a 32 with buses and stuff. I mean, they weren't the finest quality. They were very noisy, but it was a question. They were very affordable. I remember.
SEC. So how much was that one of these that you saw for sale again?
$399.
Oh, I'll tell Greg that. Because he's no idea if they got any value at all. Yeah, quite fun.
Oh, there we go. Look, SEC 882.
SEC.
Oh, look at those. All of those. Oh. They were
notoriously unreliable as well.
They were. They were. That's the one I remember. Gosh, what's that one?
There's one with blue, I remember. Yeah,
that's a blue one, although it's very hard to tell because it's not a very big image. Anyway, that's really beside the point. It's got nothing to do with the topic. But yeah, analog. But that notion, I mean, because I don't know if you have the same phenomenon. It's like watching people gaming, isn't it? Even though you're not playing it, it can be very hypnotic. Or what I used to when I may have told the story before, but I used to work in a nightclub, and I'd get home really late. And I'd be really quite hyper after doing the band and then packing up and then leaving. And sometimes a little bit inebriated or whatever. And I had a friend who lived in the basement who was a real nocturnal guy, a guy called Aaron. And he used to be coding the whole time. And I used to come back and go down to see him. And sometimes he might help me relax with a little bit of extra puff or something like that. Because I'm about that age that I used to do that sort of thing. And I used to just sit there and watch him code. And I found it really relaxing. I suppose that's a similar sort of thing. Not the perhaps almost paint drying type stuff, but you know, when you're trying to just fathom it, just see patterns in something that's completely chaotic and you know nothing about. It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah. So these these are the British then. These
I believe so.
Percussion,
Yeah,
because he was doing a conversion from 240 to 120, wasn't he? I think in that video.
Yeah. That's right.
I didn't watch that bit though.
Well, it was interesting, but it just he did actually. He was just sort of saying, oh, look, there is actually tracks in here, and all he had to do was move some pins over, and then he was talking about, well, these components are a bit big, and they're scraping on the inside, so I've got some lower profile. You know, it was just all... And also, the other thing it made me realise is how much work goes into that kind of fix, because you just assume, you know, one could easily assume that because gear is so cheap, that it's really easy to fix, or really easy and you know, labour to fix it should be really cheap, but it's not. It actually takes quite a lot of skill into those things. Anyway, it was a bit of a you know, aside. It's interesting because this week, you know, we've obviously got Cubase 10. There's not all that much. We're in that dead spot between now and NAMM, and where there's not an awful lot of hardware coming out for us to kind of gear over. Although, let's see, what else did we have? Oh, I like this one. Did you see this? This is the Endorphin ES shuttle system, which which actually is like a USB host. So there are similar things. You've got the Expert Sleeper stuff as well. You can plug an external USB device into it and then map the MIDI controllers to one of it's got 16 connections, I think, which I think are all outputs. And they've now got
We're
MPE.
happy to release for you a firmware update for shuttle control module. It is a significant update, and besides the small improvements, it received MPE support. MPE
I don't
stands
know.
for
In my mind, the person, the lady who's doing this is the Endorphins model, who is extremely photogenic, and there's they put all these posters up on their booths and stuff, and she's got an amazing face actually, and so they use her in all their promo. There's no reason other than I think she's the girlfriend of the guy who designs it, but she gives good photo, definitely. So in my mind, it's her doing the video.
Maybe it's her who's a designer though.
I'm not sure, because I think I was at Super Booth and she was there as well, because Endorphins was showing, and she was sitting on her phone just looking extremely, extremely bored. So I'm not sure that she was. I mean, she may be, but anyway, this is actually quite a big deal, because up to now it's quite difficult to utilize this MPE stuff into analog world. I mean, it can be done. I mean, there are ways, but this is yet another step in the that means it's actually more straightforward and more simple to do. And the idea of this USB host thing, and I think that's kind of I think there's a lot of room for a growth here. I don't know what you think about that.
Definitely, it's been one of my pet sort of peeves really for a long time, how slow the adoption of USB hosting has, especially with things like the Roly and with the you know, all the promise of MPE. I think one of the reasons why I was really attracted to the Touche is that it's got MIDI DIN and CV on there, so you know, you're not having to, you know, you're not stuck with a USB. I mean, I know this is MPE as well as USB hosting, but I mean, USB hosting should be standard now on a lot of kit, and it's still not. I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is, Gad. Do you think it's? I mean, because I'd imagine it's the difficulty of making sure that when you plug something into it, that it hooks up right, and because there must be an awful lot of code that has to go on and go, are you this, are you that, if you're this, do that, if you're that. I wonder what it is. I mean, sorry to interrupt. No, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's complicated, but I reckon probably most of it is just code you can just import in, you know, sort of but I don't know anything about this, so all the developers out there just going, oh, if you only knew. RetroKits, the really groovy company that we've done some stuff with in the past, they've got some quite interesting solutions for hosting. And in fact, very cool, very, very cool is, and I'm just doing this myself actually, so in the next few days, looking for it. There is an image on the RetroKits website of a Raspberry Pi. Well, basically, it's like a Raspberry Pi image to turn a Raspberry Pi into a MIDI USB host.
Okay.
So, Raspberry Pi, well, that's going to cost you like 20 odd quid or something.
And you can plug a
then
USB port into it, yeah.
You can, yes. So then, it's a quite nice way of maybe integrating something like an OP1 or some other device that has only got USB ports on. That's what I'm going to mostly use it for, is just to bring my OP1 into my MIDI world without having to use a USB, or rather using the USB connection, but just to turn it into. And in fact, in that case, that RetroKits thing works with their RK004, which is a very clever little MIDI USB device that it's a multi-port MIDI device.
That's this guy.
One of the things that's, and this thing is brilliant. This as well, it's got the little mini jacks on there, so that it can output sync pulse. But if you don't want to use those mini jacks as a sync pulse, it's actually got a very basic pulse width modulatable synth inside it that's called the Bat Synth.
Excellent.
After yours truly. But that little box is really useful, though, because it auto senses whether it's a MIDI in or a MIDI out. So you can just literally put it into your system, plug everything up, and it'll just route MIDI automatically. I mean, you can configure it if you want more control, but so essentially you could use it as a, if you want to feed multiple ins into, if you've got a bunch of keyboards or whatever, and feeding it into one place, or taking one input,
so it'll merge, or it'll split, or it'll route. Yeah. And I think it'll also do, input 1 to inputs 2 and 3, and input 2 to outputs 3. That sort of stuff as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's very useful.
Yeah, and then there's just a little jumper USB cable that you connect it to a Raspberry Pi. In fact, there's a little slot at the bottom of it that'll host a Raspberry Pi Zero that you can run that software on again. So actually have it all mounted into the same unit as well. So yeah, just well worth checking out if you've got sort of peculiar MIDI requirements. It's a clever little bot.
It's interesting though. I mean, a couple of people have said in the chat room actually that one of the problems about using MPE is to record it and then have it play back. It's just such a nightmare because you're editing all these kind of different streams of MIDI. Someone needs to come up with a plugin that makes the editing of MIDI streams per note much more simple, so you can just look at it and go, right, this is this note, and these are so you have slider values for each note, all that kind of stuff.
Cubase has got that though. It's had that for a few iterations now, where you just can click on an individual MIDI note and it'll pop open a window, and so it works very, very well for MPE devices, because it means that rather than having all these lanes and it being very confusing, it's per note expression. So you just literally can click on a note and have this window open. So I think, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think they've really got that side of things down, but I think the others could do with catching up with that a little bit, really.
Apparently, Lady Aptitude just said that that they're going to be announcing an MPE standard. MIDI are going to be announcing an MPE standard at NAMM 2018. That's definitely one to watch. That's a top tip. So that could be very useful. I guess. Yeah.
And of course, we've got Geert Bevan to thank for a lot of this MPE stuff, because he's worked tirelessly, really, to develop and promote that idea. And and Geert is he's a very talented man. We've had him on the show, haven't we?
He is a very smart cookie.
And he wrote the firmware for the Linstrument, which of course is a super MPE device, and also he's done the Moog Model 15 and various other bits and bobs. And what's nice with those apps is that they are natively support MPE, which obviously with Geert's involvement, but just to seeing it become a standard and seeing it, a wider uptake of it, I think, it's brilliant, because when you do play with an MPE device, and I'm sure anyone who's played with a Rowley C board will be able to relate to this, and absolutely the case with the Linstrument too, it's that instruments just feel that much more alive. You know, they just and I get this with my MIDI bass too. You know, when I've got the four strings, the pitch bends all being independent on each string, it just means it just gives it much more of a live instrument feel.
Yeah, it's like a visceral thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting to do this, but I really should plug our own instrument as well. Wave Junction Max for Live synth, which now that we've got deeper integration, or will have soon with Ableton Live, will be even more interesting. So this is Wave Junction. It's got a couple of oscillators, 3 multi-mode filters you can run in series or parallel, plus two in parallel and one on the output, 12 slot modulation matrix, 5 envelopes, 5 LFOs, up to 4 voice paraphony, and it's capable of some great sounds. We've got wavetable synthesis, we've got all these different sort of modes for the oscillators. All of this stuff that you're hearing now is actually just done in the bit in Wave Junction, obviously, apart from the drums. If you want to get one, you need Ableton Live. bit.ly/Wave Junction will get you to a 10% discount. You can use the code WJTalk17. So 10% off, so I know it's an extra couple of quid, but it's only 20 quid, so it's not exactly going to break the bank. But if you are into Ableton Live and you've got Max for Live, do check it out, because it really does kind of give you that kind of whole instrument thing. Anyway, just wanted to plug that too. Available now. Anyway, right, what else have we got? We got a few more. Any of the remaining ones are ones that you would particularly like to talk about, Gaz? Because we've got a couple here that we haven't got to. Sorry.
The list. Let's just have a look at the list.
What do you think about the modular effects? Is that something that's of interest?
It is interesting. Could you do it as like a standalone, or
well, this guy, I'll play it. Synthetic sound.
Play it, yeah.
I think this is the effects capacitor, which has DSP effects in it. But what's interesting about it is this is actually a 5U, so it's even more unlikely to be, you're less likely to have a case for it. But what is really cool about it is the idea of being able to modulate all of this stuff in real time and be able to kind of actually get hands-on. Because usually when you're modulating and messing around with effects, you get all sorts of glitching because of the way that the algorithms are punched on the fly. So I'm not sure whether this is kind of unique to that degree. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure that the algorithms are especially, unique, but it's just the fact that you can... The ability to tweak it so much in real time is what I really like.
And how much can you patch it with? You can patch... There's a lot of inputs on there, is there, as well, for control voltage?
Let me just go and grab that. That's Synthetic Sound Labs. Hold on. You've caught me a bit unawares there, because I don't think I have the page. For some reason, I didn't think we'd ever get to it. But it's been on the list for a while, and we've always had more to talk about than Synthetic Sound Labs. Let's have a look here. So, Synthetic Sound Labs, that's the effects capacitor, model 1350. So, what's it got? It's got, oh yeah, look, we've got signal in, CV, A, B, and C. So, we've got A, B, and C, different feedback loops, and then I think, right, and then we've got the ability to... modulate those particular parameters, which I'm guessing you must they must be parameters. I'm not sure what they exactly are, so that's difficult for me to answer that. 399, it's 5U. I'm guessing it'd be fairly easy for them to put that into just a direct Eurorack format as well at some point in the future. And also then you could, because I really like the idea, and I think there's room for these kind of single, because I've got this clouds, the brilliant Sonic Talk 500 commemorative cloud thing. I love to put that in just a little kind of box, standalone box, so it's its own thing, rather than have to pull out the entire modular and stick it in the. That's what I kind of like. I like the idea of having it as a single purpose. I mean, kind of a bit like what Coma have done with the Field Kit, and more recently, what was the other thing that they did, which was the effects, Field Kit effects. So you've just got this little self-contained, modulatable kind of effects thing. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a load of more interesting effects coming out soon. I'm convinced about it. I think it's this because there was a time that external effects units were, almost VST effects or whatever.
Well, the only way to go. I mean, because now we can process in almost in real time through DSP.
But I mean, one of the real joys of the Behringer DeepMind synth is the way that the effects are integratable into the synth engine, so you can run the LFOs. You can do all sorts of stuff with the effects, with the patchability of it, and just integrating effects within that sort of synthesizer.
Yeah, that's true.
Because
you can modulate for effects parameters using LFOs or envelopes or note values or sequences and stuff, and that's one of the more powerful features of it. You're right there, yeah.
And so actually having an effects unit with lots of CV control makes perfect sense. So I mean, this thing looks really good, and I'm still desperately resisting being pulled into Eurorack or as much as that. Although, to be honest, if I was going to build a Eurorack, it would be to build an external effects unit, really, as opposed to a synthesizer. And
okay, all right, I've got a question for you, Gaz. At what point does it stop being a Eurorack module? And say you've got something like this just in a box, say it was in Eurorack format, and it's just a single box with its own power supply. Same with the Pittsburgh single voice thing as well, SV1, SV2. Is that Eurorack, or is that just a little modular synth, desktop synth, or maybe the Zero Coast? Is that Eurorack, or is that what? At what point does it? Where's the line that you would draw?
It's having empty rack slots, isn't it? That's that's the danger, isn't it? I mean, because every time you look at it and those empty, you're going to be just fantasizing how to fill those rack slots up, and then once it's full, you're going to be hunting out another rack then. And I just think it's when you've got something that's enclosed like the No Coast, then it's just it's just a single purchase, isn't it? Even though
that's true. I see what you mean. Well, because you could argue that the Volcas and all of the other little things that you have are essentially similar in concept, but they just don't happen to fit in a rack system, right? Yes. So I mean, I think it's just more for my mental health, really. I think I think I get insanely excited about pieces of kit and stuff, and and modding my system. It just feels like Eurorack, I would just explode. I think it would just be too much to comprehend. And but I mean, that's just me. But I mean, I can see the point. I can see a point where Eurorack essentially becomes a term like MIDI. You get a MIDI module, you get a Eurorack module, and it represents the busing between the various parts. They don't have to be physically in the same place, so you just end up with a Eurorack, because you end up with these lots of little desktop synths coming out. I mean, even the Endorphin shuttle system, I forget what Ed did a great review of it, which also has the Endorphin shuttle actual USB controller as part of it, but it also has a voice, and that's a self-contained. It comes in a little sort of I don't know what they call them, boat, or So it's self-contained. You can't put anything else in it. I suppose you could take things out and put other things in it, and that's the danger, I suppose, isn't it? If it's not user serviceable in any way, maybe that's the condition that it needs to fulfill the criteria, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I have eyed up things like the Dreadbox have been offering. I don't know if they still are, but they were offering some. Oh no! Rack units where it was like Eurorack, but fully like a fully populated Eurorack system. I can't remember what they were called, but they had a few. I don't know if they're still doing them. Where all of the slots are filled, so they are, so essentially that is a one-off purchase. But yeah. I nearly did it years ago, because in Bristol there's a funny little synth shop called Emis that's been here for years and years and years.
The legendary Andrew Emis, yes.
And it's is that his name?
Yeah, Andy Emis. I
okay.
visited him several years ago.
I thought his name was Andy Horrell. I thought his name was.
Oh, maybe not. Oh, maybe you're right. I thought it was just Andy Emis.
But Emis is funny in that it was really the first place, I don't know, in Britain, possibly in Britain.
It's the first dope for dealer, for sure. Yeah.
Dope for dealer, yeah, it's dope for. And they've been running a modular club for years there. And they would have like little Christmas get-togethers and make Christmas carols on their synths and stuff.
That's a really nice idea.
But I mean, that was like in the time when nowhere else was doing it, and he's still in business, still got his little shop. It's an old school. I think we've talked about it before, because upstairs Emis is just the most astonishing collection of synthesizers he's got up there. He's got a little synth museum there that's really, really impressive. But yeah, that little synth club, I don't know if they still do it, but if you remember, you get cheaper. You can buy cheaper modules if you're a member of the little club there.
Oh yeah, that's right. Hold on, here we go. Look, 20 years of representing dope for product. This is such a cracking 1990s website. You know, DTP.
It's like going back in time, but like going to the shop is the same. It's like it really, you know, for it being like synths, it really does feel quite retro.
That's awesome. Synth repair effects used. Oh, let's have a look. Synth, that's the used stuff. They got a lot of used stuff. Wow, look at that. All of that 90s rack stuff that you just 75 quid Proteus 1 Roland D110 75 quid for a D110. That is oh wow. Hold on a minute. This is dangerous. Whoa. What else have we got here? Oh my lord. These are Moog Mother 32. That's a used one. Gosh, that is Simpson. Oh god, I keep looking now. Let's see what else has he got.
I mean, it's always
Kawai K1 Mark II, £149. Good lord. Micro preset, 249. What? That's what I started on. One of those. I rented it from.
They're cool, those
I rented that. That is what I rented one of those from my local music shop. I mean, it sounded dreadful, but has it got rhythms? Has it got rhythms in it? Has it got rhythms? I can't tell what that is. No, that's like a edit matrix. Good lord, 149 quid. I might have to go and buy that.
149?
Yeah, I think that's what it says. Oh no, 249. That's still not bad.
Yeah.
Oh, has he got more than one?
Good.
Oh my. Anyway, I'm getting well distracted there. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Anyway, Gaz, I think we've probably reached the end of our potential here today. But I want to say thank you for being game, for being the only other dude on the show.
No, it's grand. It's a pleasure, and I just want to plug. I've got a new video that I've just put up on my Gaz Williams YouTube channel. That's it's all about my new album, The Lawn. So and that's the last I'll mention of it now.
Hold on, I'm gonna see if I can find it now. Oh,
banging on and on about it. I made a little micro version of the album as well, where I've made it like short little pieces. So if you want to have a little overview of it.
Okay, I will check. I'm just sort of. I haven't got time. I haven't got the bandwidth to get the search box right. But yeah,
that's all right.
Search Gaz Williams on YouTube. You'll be able to find it very easily.
Yeah, sure. Please do. Yeah, that's cool. Because we've got these. Where is it? Oh, here. Ta-da! So that's our vinyl. But we've just got these, a special edition. They've got nice little inserts, and they've got little.
Is that a cracked phone screen on the front?
Nearly. So what happened here, Andy, the guitarist, who's also the designer, he dropped his AC30 onto his MacBook Pro, and he destroyed his MacBook Pro. And the job he was doing at the time was coming up with a design for the album cover. So he had the wherewithal to take a photo of the MacBook Pro screen just before it died, and this is just the MacBook Pro screen, and these weird lines were just some sort of strange pixels. It all stopped doing that after a while, So that's
That's
just
awesome.
a straight, and then the album's called The Lawn. And the next day he was driving through Devizes and he just passed a house that was called The Lawn. And that's actually a photograph of the house name.
Wow.
The Lawn.
Wow. Okay. That is a concept worthy of a concept album, right?
Yeah. And it's it's just that, like, you know, instead of it taking ages to design it, it just came out of like two sort of random incidents, really. But I think that's quite a cool cover, really, isn't it? Looks
I like
nice.
that. That's good.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Don't forget, if you want to enter the Isotope competition, I will show you the details right now. What you got to do is, using Twitter, you tweet the hashtag MasteringMaster, the hashtag Ozone8 with the letter 8, to @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc., and that will get you entered into the competition. Stay tuned. We will be having, first of all, I'm going to do at some point in the near future a review of the SH01A, which I have to say I do think is a great format for the boutique. And also, I've just finished the review of the mad Russian synth, which is the Lyra 8 organismic synthesizer, which I think is awesome.
I can't wait to see that review. I am.
Well, it's ready. I actually played it at the beginning of the show before we were actually live. So just as you came on, it was the tail end of what that was, which was so yeah. I will. It will be out there soon. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care. Right, brilliant. I think it looks like Facebook didn't go live with my video, which is awesome. One of those things that they just seem to do all the time. I'll just switch you back on, Gaz. Oh, well, never mind.
Could you use Switcher to stream to Facebook? Like, actually set it?
You can, yeah.